And it looks like we are live. I'm going to give it a couple minutes for people to join. And before I start playing a couple of the funny things that I found today. So I'll be right back. All right, we'll give it another minute or so. It's about 4 o'clock here on the East Coast. And I think it's around, what's the difference in the wintertime? I think it's like +5 CET. That would be around 9 CET. EST to CET. 6 hours. So it is almost 10 o'clock. Yeah, it's weird because we both have daylight savings. And the problem is that we have different daylight savings on different times, different weekends. So it actually could be 4 hours at some points of the year. It could be 5 hours or it could be 6 hours. Oh, hi, Truth Warrior. I see your post there. Oh, I know about those 10-hour days. I've been awake for like 10 hours. It's what's 4 now? That means I woke up at 6 in the morning. Yeah. 10-hour days are rough. All right, so I am going to, is it 4 yet? Close enough. I'm going to play these funny clips. Anyone comes on, post and pop on.
We got a special edition of Legal AF with Karen Freeman Agnifilo and Michael Popak because we just went through and watched and heard about the sentencing of Donald Trump on the 34-count felony conviction. The jury returned 12-0, 6-month delay in sentencing, all because of Donald Trump. Last-minute reprieve by the Supreme Court denied. 5-4, Amy Coney Barrett joining Justice Roberts to deny the blocking of the sentencing, and everybody showed up in court today for the sentencing. Josh Steinglass argued on behalf of the Manhattan DA's office. Todd Blanche argued on behalf of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump appeared virtually and gave a 5-minute rambling.
I like how they always word here when Trump speaks. It's like it's a rambling
campaign speech. There's no far-ranging, doing everything except really addressing the issues that were in play during the sentencing. And as we expected, the sentence is exactly what not only Justice Merchan said it was going to be, but I will argue as we get through that.
I don't know any other defendant that's been convicted of, what was it, 24 or 30? I think it's 34 felonies. 34 felonies, and the sentence is, we're going to clear you of any kind of penalty. Actually, if he got a speeding ticket, it would be worse than what he got today.
This hot take that the Justice Merchan, did something so smart and made his sentence almost Supreme Court proof because he did an unconditional discharge, which, of course, our expert here, Karen Freeman Agnifilo, criminal defense lawyer extraordinaire from the Manhattan DA's office for most of her career, is going to explain. Karen, why don't you catch everybody up now about what we know from what happened in the courtroom on these various participants, and then finally what Justice Merchan got around to saying before he imposed sentence.
But really, what the headline here that everybody's going to pick up on is that Trump was sentenced to what's called an unconditional discharge.
I've never even heard of that before. An unconditional discharge, which means you're guilty, but we're not going to actually do anything.
This is what Judge Merchan said he was going to sentence him to, and really said his hands were tied because he is now the president-elect. And there's really no sentence at all, no conditions whatsoever that he can impose on somebody who's going to be the president of the United States, whether it be community service or probation or a fine or jail or anything. There's nothing, because he's a state court judge and holds the highest office. He really felt like his hands were tied. And so he gave them an unconditional discharge, which some people will say is not even the equivalent of a slap on the wrist. It's truly nothing.
Yeah, this is less than taking someone's wrist and then just slapping it. This is.
But I would argue
nothing.
And push back that that's not true, that is not nothing, because a lot of momentous things have happened today. First of all, he is now officially a convicted felon, because he's not a convicted felon in New York until he is sentenced. And so today he has been sentenced, and so he will take office in 10 days as a convicted felon, the first ever in the history of this country. And so
it's so great to be part of this proud country where we're electing people that have just terrible records and backgrounds. But I guess that's what happens when you get into politics.
I think that's important. The other thing that's important is it just shows that nobody in this country is above the law, and that presidents truly aren't.
Oh, no. This shows that, I think she's totally wrong there. This shows that there are people above the law. You name me one other person in the country that could be guilty of 34 felonies and not pay a price. Name one other person. He is totally above the law.
Kings, because he's like anybody else. And that was the thing that really struck me about this proceeding that the parties talked about, which is, look, and the judge said this, look, the office of the presidency might be extraordinary, but the holder of the office is not. And when you enter this courtroom and you close the door, you are like anybody else. This trial was like any other trial. A defendant is like any other defendant.
She is right there. The trial was like any other trial. The defendant was treated pretty much like any other defendant. There were some things that I think were kind of not so kosher, but that has to do with him violating the gag order. If anyone else violated the gag order, they would have been held in contempt. But they did let him get away with a lot of stuff like that.
And it's the office of the presidency that's extraordinary, not the office holder. I thought that was what was really sobering, a sobering reminder of really the criminal justice system in this country. But there were a few other unusual things that happened today. First of all, Trump was permitted to appear virtually from Florida. That never happens. I can't think of another time.
Yeah, she's right. Again, this shows that he's above the law. Any defendant in a criminal case, not a civil case, in a criminal case that is being sentenced, they have to show up to court. Like, they can't just zoom in.
Even during COVID, where a felon was permitted to appear virtually for their sentence, but they did. There was also a probation report, which I thought was really interesting. Now, we'll never get to see that. That's something that is not part of the public record. But what was interesting, a little nugget that the prosecutor Josh Steinglass dropped, was that Trump was actually interviewed by probation. There was a probation officer that conducted an interview like any other defendant, because this is part of the process. After you are convicted and before sentence, a probation officer will interview the defendant and take down all kinds of information and make a recommendation to the judge. And one of the things that they talk about is whether the defendant shows remorse. And of course, he showed no remorse and actually expressed that he thinks he's above the law, which we know, but it was just astounding to see that he is still saying it even after the sentence to a probation.
I just got a message. It might be snowing here again tomorrow. Like, is it enough with the cold weather and snow already? I really feel like I should be going somewhere on vacation. Let's see. I'm going to check tomorrow's forecast. I don't think anyone's really interested in so much in this aftermath. We got today, tomorrow. We might get a little bit of flurries before 9 a.m. Okay. It doesn't look like too much. Precipitation 0.01. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's gonna die out before it really hits us hard. All right. Onward with the Trump suffers humiliating criminal sentencing in New York.
Officer. So I thought a couple other things were notable. I thought it was interesting that Josh Steinglass, the lead prosecutor in this case, actually did the sentencing and not Alvin Bragg himself. It's because of the fear of retribution later that Kash Patel and Trump and others talked about, that nobody's scared. Josh Steinglass was not cowering away from doing this sentencing himself and having the elected DA do it just to kind of have some separation. So I thought that was great that the Manhattan DA's office was just treating this case like any other case. They didn't do anything different or unusual. And Steinglass recommended the unconditional discharge because he said, although this case could have received.
Okay, so I'll pause it there. Steinglass recommending the unconditional discharge. Actually, it did not come from Steinglass. And today is the first day I've ever heard of Steinglass. This is a coordinated effort to try to stop the Supreme Court from overruling the original ruling. That's what this is about.
Prison time. And it happens that people receive prison time, and I would suspect that if he was not elected president, we would see a sentence of prison time here. Given
she's absolutely right. If Trump was not being sworn in as the president, you just don't get 34 felonies and not pay a price. He would have paid a heavy price. So yes, there is not one rule for all. You get treated better if you win the presidency.
Not only the seriousness of the conduct, but also Trump's conduct during the trial, that he was held in contempt multiple times, and that he just to this day has no remorse. He talked about that this was a decisive, unanimous jury verdict that must be respected. And he talked about the things that Trump has done post sentencing to undermine the verdict, like criticizing it, criticizing the jury, et cetera. And it was reported that Trump, although he was on video, was shaking his head when Steinglass was saying all this, and the microphone was muted. So if he said anything, we were not going to hear it. But he was sitting there in front of an American flag with Todd Blanche from Florida during all this and listening to this. And Steinglass went on to say that there was no expression of remorse, that Trump had these unrelenting attacks that were unsubstantiated on the court, meaning when they say the court, it means the judge and the judge's employees, also on the prosecutors and the jury. And he tried to encourage others to reject the jury verdict. So he said that Trump's conduct constitutes a direct attack on the rule of law itself and on Judge Merchan. And he cited both Justice Merchan's statements in the past and in other writings, as well as Chief Justice Roberts. And I thought that was interesting because rather than making this personal about Josh Steinglass or the Manhattan DA's office, he's actually citing to Chief Justice Roberts from the Supreme Court and Justice Merchan, just sort of saying, look, other judges have also said this, and just deflecting it away from the Manhattan DA's office and showing that judges have said this about him. And Steinglass said, look, this defendant has caused enduring damage to the public perception of the criminal justice system, which is true. He really...
Yeah, I agree with you there. That is true.
He has. And that is what I think... What I think is the issue here is really how he's undermined the rule of law and undermined the criminal justice process, and basically said, look, the sentence of an unconditional discharge preserves the status of a convicted felon, and he can now appeal and go through all of the various avenues that he wants to appeal. What I thought was interesting is Steinglass does not appear to have mentioned the case at all, the facts of the case, the seriousness of the case, et cetera. He's just talking about the criminal justice system and the defendant's conduct. Now, that's unusual. Most of the time, when you are recommending any sentence, you talk about the case, you talk about the facts. Steinglass stayed away from that. Now, Todd Blanche, who is soon to be the number 2 at the Department of Justice, who is Trump's lawyer who...
Stop it there for a second, because this whole thing, when you work for the Department of Justice, you're supposed to be neutral. You're not supposed to have any kind of political leaning at all. And then so someone that just defended and represented Trump for the last 2-3 years, complete ally, is now going to have the number 2 position at the Department of Justice, which is it's an unconfirmed Senate position, so he could actually put in there whoever he wants. But the Department of Justice is supposed to be neutral, and that's what really, really is terrible about this, because no one's going to have faith. People already don't have faith in the Supreme Court anymore. And now people are not going to have faith in the Department of Justice.
Who tried this case, lost, but tried this case. He went next, which is how this goes, and said that he intends to appeal the verdict, that the majority of the American people also agree this case should not have been brought, and said it's a sad day for Trump and his family. And just made brief remarks. And then Trump was given an opportunity to speak, which he chose to take that opportunity. And as you said, it was like a campaign speech. And he said, this is a terrible experience. It was a setback for New York court system. But he also kind of, that he doesn't go after Bragg himself. He says Bragg didn't even want to bring this case. He thought it was inappropriately handled. But he's talking about a separate case that Bragg chose not to bring. So I think he's conflating and confusing these different cases. And because Bragg actually chose to bring this case.
Yeah, she's right. So what the lawyer said was another case that is totally unrelated. And that's just being used as just a line saying, oh, they didn't even want to bring this case against Trump because it's so weak. There's no way that he'd be convicted.
The other case that Cy Vance was investigating and was Cy Vance.
By the way, Cy Vance has no relation to J.D. Vance,
the prior DA who I worked for, who recommended charges to be brought, Alvin Bragg, when he took office, looked at those charges and declined to bring them. The subject of that was largely what was covered in the civil fraud case in front of Judge Engoron here in New York, and chose to bring this case instead. But it's interesting that in all of his ire, Trump doesn't seem to go after the DA Alvin Bragg, but he said, look, this was he did his campaign speech stuff. Oh, this was a legal expense. That's what it said. I didn't say it was concrete. I didn't say it was, construction. It was a legal expense, paying a.
Yeah, paying. The case was paying a porn star and trying to slip it through campaign finance regulations, which, if you're going to pay someone, don't make it campaign finance, because that's probably the most scrutinized way to do something. Just get cash. You get cash. You take it out of your ATM until you have enough money, and then you pay the person off. Don't do it through your companies. Don't do it through business. People are trying to do it on the cheap and try to have other people pay for stuff, whether it's your loyal subordinates, you're raising money from the public. Don't do it through campaign if you're trying to pay someone off.
He thinks paying a porn star hush money payments and then lying about it is a legal expense. But anyway, called it a political witch hunt, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. He called paying her off. This is a porn star. She has nothing to do with anything legal. She is not a lawyer. And that's how he tried to do it, because he's tried to do it on the cheap. And maybe it wasn't even Trump's idea. It might have been Michael Cohen's idea to do it that way.
Judge Merchan closes it out with his remarks, which is how the process goes. And he basically said that thank you, Mr. Trump. Never before has this court had a case like this. This is truly extraordinary. But then he went on to say, but it's the office of the presidency that's extraordinary, not the occupant of the office. And that there's nothing different about this trial, that once the door's closed, you're a defendant like everybody else. And the jury is the jury, and the legal protections go where they go, as they would to any other defendant. And he basically said he doesn't need to repeat the aggravating factors that he recently talked about in his recent orders, which he did very much in his recent orders, where he talked about what the sentence is going to be. He said, however, there's so many legal protections that are afforded to the office of the presidency, not the person, but the office of the presidency, that literally overrides everything else in the sentencing. And so it does not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. That's exactly what this is about. This is why he was guilty, but he doesn't have to suffer any penalty.
Its commission in any way, these legal protections. But one power, I love this one power that these legal protections that the office of the presidency holds do not provide is the power to erase the jury verdict. So he sentenced him to an unconditional discharge and closed out his remarks saying, "Sir, I wish you Godspeed as you take your second term in office." It was about a minute, it was 40 minutes long, full amount of time any sentencing takes. And that was that.
It was a little bit anticlimactic. And I think the reason for it is everybody was being very circumspect, because there's going to be appeals off of this. One of the reasons that Donald Trump has been losing all in 3 different courts, now 4 with the United States Supreme Court, about this case is because all of his attempts to stop the sentencing have been premature. In order to get full-blown appellate rights, in order to be able to appeal the merits, if he had any merits to arguing that Justice Merchan had committed reversible error, you got to get to the final judgment of decree, and you can't get there without the sentencing.
Yes. So what he just said is very, very important. And it's the way that the American legal system works. You don't generally go to the Supreme Court before your legal appellate options are done. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
So the first stop on the train 2 days ago, what I call the Manhattan Appellate Court, the first department, an emergency duty judge there said, no, I'm not stopping the sentencing. We need the sentencing in order for you to have a right to an appeal on all of the issues that you're raising. You're raising them prematurely. There's no such thing as president-elect immunity. So no,
Yeah,
you're going to.
That's exactly, yeah. When he says president-elect immunity, that's exactly part of the problem. That is, Trump committed the crimes when he was not in office. The case was brought against him when he was not in office. The verdict was found when he was not in office. And so you can't have presidential immunity when you're not in office. There should be no, but yet 4 justices actually put in their opinion that, oh, it doesn't matter if you're, now all of a sudden it doesn't matter if you're not the president. Oh, yeah. Now president-elect is immune too, which is not written anywhere. Even in the latest opinion about immunity, it's not written there. They're just simping.
To go forward. He didn't like that. So as we suspected, he went to the Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York, and the Court of Appeals said the same thing. Effectively, this record is incomplete. You can't start arguing about all the things you think Justice Merchan did wrong in the way he handled evidence or the application of the immunity decision. But we're beyond immunity decision. We're into every aspect of what is in front of Justice Merchan today is about pre-presidential conduct.
Yes, and what Popak is saying here is exactly what I was saying. This is about pre-presidential conduct. Very, very important. You're not immune if you are not the president. All this immunity bullshit is just, well, it's actually stuff that the Supreme Court just made up on the fly. Instead of going through Congress saying, create laws about this, the majority, the very far-leaning right majority on the Supreme Court said, oh yeah, we're just going to make up these laws. Yeah, even though it's not the Supreme Court's to make job to make laws, we just uphold the law and define what is in the law. But we're gonna forget about that. But nothing they said had anything to do with conduct about someone who's not even president.
Donald Trump was never president. He was the acts he committed, the core conspiratorial acts with Michael Cohen. These are the people involved in the conspiracy who testified. Or as Donald Trump called him today, he's not George Washington. I don't know what that means, but we know he has a vendetta against our fellow friend and podcaster Michael. Michael Cohen testified. David Picard testified, the National Enquirer publisher. 2/3 of the conspiracy testified, along with dozens of other people and mountains of evidence against Donald Trump. So these couple of stray pieces of evidence that may or may not have touched on Donald Trump becoming president, that was really the only issue. There was never an issue because his lawyers already conceded that nothing about the conspiracy was covered by presidential immunity. They filed that in papers with Judge Alvin Hellerstein when they try to remove the case. This is what happens when you try so many different procedures. You don't know what you're doing and you're not consistent. They had already waived the issue. They already admitted that the conduct at the heart of the Stormy Daniels hush money cover-up affair was not covered by immunity.
Yeah, and what he's saying is pretty funny because they're throwing straws out. They're throwing straws saying, well, yes, we admit that it's not covered by immunity, but then they go back and say, well, we're going to appeal because there should be immunity. I don't know. It's silly.
Okay. Now we're left to these kind of arcane issues of evidence and immunity that he tried to take up to the Supreme Court. So Court of Appeals said no. And as we suspected, he tried to throw a Hail Mary pass, jump the tracks, and go to the United States Supreme Court. It was closer than I thought it was going to be. I've done a hot take on it.
Yeah, it actually was close. It was a 5-4 decision. Even though on the merits of the case, it should have been 9-0. 4 justices decided not to follow the law, the way that the legal system works, and tried to get him, Trump, the thing hauled just like done. Don't even sentence. And I guess Thomas is the worst. Alito's not so far behind. Gorsuch not far behind him. Kavanaugh, I'm surprised Kavanaugh did that. But the 2 Republican justices that actually did the right thing, because they tend to follow the law, was Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett.
It was 5-4. It's what I thought. Amy Coney Barrett, who's become the centrist, right centrist, was able to get Roberts to join her with the what I call the Democratic wing of the Supreme Court. Ketanji Brown Jackson, Sotomayor, and Kagan, to form a 5-person block to effectively say, there's no such thing as presidential elect immunity. They didn't say that.
Yes, right. There is no such thing as presidential elect immunity, but yet 4 justices decided to believe that there is.
But they didn't bite on that opportunity when John Sauer argued presidential elect immunity. Like, that's not a thing. That's one. 2, they saw it as a run-of-the-mill criminal prosecution that had not yet been completed without the sentencing. And if he had any issues, he needs to take it up on a full appeal, exhaust his appeal rights up on the state court level, get a full and complete record. And if there's any constitutional issues left over.
And what he's saying here is important, because Trump now that he's been sentenced, he does have the right to appeal. He could appeal it to the next court level up. If that fails, he could appeal that to the next court level up, and then go to the Supreme Court. There is nothing stopping him from doing that, except he's not allowed to do that before you actually get the sentence.
For the feds, take it back to the Supreme Court, but not now. And then thirdly, this is what I mentioned earlier in the hot take today. This is the Supreme Court proofing that I think Justice Merchan very smartly did. We were all up in arms. Nobody wants an unconditional discharge. Nobody wanted that, at least on this side of the aisle, this side of the microphone. But we knew that was coming from last Friday. And that is the thing that the Supreme Court 5, the 5 that voted to not block sentencing, hooked themselves into, which was, well, what's the big deal? Justice Merchan has already said he's not going to sentence you to prison. And so it's not going to improperly interfere with your presidential transition duties or your incoming president duties. So no. And see how they went for that. Now, I think that was bait that Justice Merchan put out, just like we'll talk later on, not today, on the weekend.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. The fact that the Judge Merchan said that ahead of time, that was very, very clever. I think that has a big part of to do with why the verdict was the way it was. If he didn't give that hint that Trump would not suffer any consequences, one of those two, Amy Coney Barrett or Roberts, could have flipped. You're never going to get Sotomayor, you're never going to get Kagan or Jackson to flip on this issue. But one of those two could have, and then the case would be gone forever.
And another thing's about, I think, a tactical move that was made by the Department of Justice and the special counsel about the Mar-a-Lago report. It's very similar. I'll tie it together at another point. So it Supreme Court proofed it. They got their 5th vote, and therefore we did not have John Roberts doing what I thought he found to be unsavory, which is to touch the immunity third rail again and try to bail out Donald Trump, having taken so much understandable flack for what he did with the immunity decision that he wrote back in the summer. So then we come into, with that as a backdrop, knowing there's going to be appeals left and right, you had a very circumspect Josh Steinglass kind of playing the role of the sentencing judge, but not outlining everything that happened. Then you had Donald Trump doing that 5-minute campaign speech, and a very sort of shrunken Todd Blanche, not saying much either, other than this is not an appropriate case to have been brought, turning it over to his client to talk about the very terrible experience he went through. Of course, nothing like what he had written on social media. I mean, Donald Trump is two-faced. He tells his MAGA supporters on social media, I'll play their little game. I'll go into this ridiculous sentencing if they're going to make me do it. Very interesting, though. He didn't slam the Supreme Court when they issued their ruling not to block the sentencing. He actually said he understood the decision, and it was a good decision. He just thinks they were put in a difficult position. He's starting to.
There's absolutely a reason why he said that. It's for future decisions. This one is minor. Trump is suffering no consequences. But if he does something to piss off Roberts or Amy Coney Barrett, Trump is smart enough to realize that might make them a little bit perturbed. I guess perturbed is a better word than angry. A little bit more perturbed at him. So he's not going to single out any of the potential Republican members on the Supreme Court. That's exactly why. He is smart enough. Trump is smart enough to read the room for that.
Very favor with them, besides the fact that he and Sam Alito had a phone call about something unrelated to the things up before the court related to Donald Trump. At least we're supposed to believe that. We have no readout of the phone call, so we don't really know. All I know is the same day he's filing emergency applications with the Supreme Court to bail him out of a criminal case, he's on the phone with Sam Alito having a chit chat. Leave that for another day. So he certainly sees the Supreme Court as being a place where he's going to be spending a lot of time with this administration in the coming year, and didn't want to piss them off by crapping all over them. Very, very, very cunning decision by Donald Trump. So he's blasting Alvin Bragg and Mershon before he enters the virtual hearing room. But then when he's there, he doesn't do much to attack them. He sort of wants to go back to the theory that, Joe Biden was telling Alvin Bragg what to do, and making him bring a prosecution that Alvin didn't even want to bring. Totally wrong. We know the life cycle of how Alvin Bragg got right with this case, how he got right with Michael Cohen, how he didn't originally want to take the case, how he had to be convinced of it over time. I'm sure in talking to Letitia James, who was trying the companion case on the civil fraud that went up, and she was able to get a $458 million response. There's a lot of interaction between Letitia James and professional respect between the two of them, Alvin Bragg and Letitia James. And Letitia put Michael Cohen through the paces first. It took him for a spin around the track as a witness. And I'm sure that also gave a lot of confidence to Alvin Bragg in putting Michael up successfully in front of the jury in that case. So now what happens? What happens is he's now been sentenced, which means he can now take his full-blown appeal. He knows he's not able to go skip a step and take it to the feds. So he's going to have to go appellate division, first department, which already has a briefing schedule in place through Justice Gessmer. There's I think briefs are all due on the 21st after the inauguration, but that's really on the emergency application, which I have a feeling he's going to withdraw the Article 78 lawsuit that he filed against Mershon and against Alvin Bragg, and instead he's going to focus on the full-blown appeal about all the things he thinks Justice Mershon did wrong, and that he should have recused himself, and his daughter works in Democratic politics, and Judge Mershon donated $50 to Democratic causes.
I do remember that there was a story where Trump wanted the judge thrown off the case because the judge, over the past 20 years, the judge donated $50 to an organization. And because of that, Trump is saying, I want the judge thrown off the case. Yes.
Whatever he's going to argue about that, he can argue it to the two levels of appeal in New York. And that'll likely be the end of the road for him, because I don't see a constitutional issue really arising on this. Maybe that last immunity evidence thing, but you can see that there may not be the votes for that at the United States Supreme Court. So all that's going on. That's the update, Karen. Anything else that we missed in the sentencing update?
Yeah, look, one thing I just will say is, first of all, you overstated a little bit how much Judge Mershon donated to a Democratic. It wasn't $50. I think it was like 20. But anyway, that's not.
Thank you for chastising me over there.
No, I'm just saying it was so little that
I know. Right.
The only thing is, it's so unusual to have the sentencing is about to be released, and the audio, we will get to hear it. That's unusual. That does not happen. And so it is literally everything about this case is been happening. They're bending over backwards to make sure that the American people get to have the truth. I think it also reined Trump in a little bit. I don't think his attacks were terrible during his remarks, because knowing that he can't go out and lie the way he did throughout this entire trial, saying that things. He would literally come out and give a speech and say something happened, and then we would listen to the transcripts, and it turns out he just lied. But there was such a delay that we weren't able to do that. So I think this kept him a little bit under control, knowing that he was going to be in check. And so that audio is going to be available. It's 38, 40-minute long sentencing if anyone wants to hear it. But essentially, this is what happened. I'm so happy to have done this with you, Popak, to close this case out that I've been doing with you and Ben together, just covering it from the
4 years
for years. But it's finally closed out, and that's just happy to do it with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You too. And I couldn't wait when I saw in our chain about who was going to be able to be free. Ben is still suffering the effects with his family of the fires.
That's right. Yeah, one of their friends lives in that area with the California fires.
And so we wanted him on here as well. But there will be, following this, there will be a hot take that Ben or Brett will do, which will incorporate the audio. But we wanted to get this up to you really quickly. So on behalf of Legal AF, Karen Freeman-Agnifilo, Michael Popak, Ben Meiselas, follow us on the full-length podcast.
One last interesting thing about this bit, and it has nothing to do with the case, is she's the attorney that's now representing the Luigi guy that is accused. Well, obviously, should I say? No, he is the one accused of killing the CEO. I think he's a CEO or CFO of the one of the healthcare things.
We do Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube recording and all of our audio podcast platforms. And a new show coming up on Saturday. I think Ben and I are going to have a hard time figuring out what to cover in that 1 hour period. And then, of course, we've got the new Legal AF YouTube channel. We're going to hit 400,000 subscribers this weekend, only with your help. We're people powered here. Legal AFers and Midas Mighty. We appreciate you all until our next hot take. Michael Popak and Karen Freeman-Agnifilo. Hello.
All right. So still no one on. I'll do another one I thought was pretty funny. This is about one of Trump's picks in his responsibility to pick a lot of positions. I don't know if this one gets a Senate confirmation. Like all the important ones get the Senate confirmation. So you'll see, and you're going to see like the Secretary of Defense. You're going to see the one that Matt Gaetz was trying to get. I know there's around 10 or so that you just need to have a confirmation on. I don't think the IRS guy needs it, but look who Trump is nominating to be the head of the IRS. A company with I think it's over 80,000 positions.
In the absence of any normal vetting or background check process for Donald Trump's nominees to run the U.S. government.
Oh, let me stop it right there, because what she says is it might go under the radar. Every president until now, every president-elect until now, always goes through FBI background checks for any important position. Why Trump decided I do not want background checks for my people that I'm gonna, I mean, it's obvious, like he just wants to win. He's not hiring people based on their capability. He's hiring people based on their fealty.
Perhaps a Rachel Maddow show public servant announcement can help. Today, it's Trump's pick to run the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS commissioner, which is
Oh, stop, Truth Warrior. I don't care about the politics. I'm just, until someone comes on. When someone comes on, I just drop whatever I'm showing. I'd rather just talk to people than show politics stuff.
really important job, potentially a dangerous job. You might remember that the last time around with Trump, people who he decided were his enemies, people like the director and the deputy director at the FBI, they mysteriously found themselves randomly selected for really rare, really extra intrusive IRS audits. Now, ultimately, there was a review of that said it was all just a coincidence, nothing to see here, and okay. But Trump has also denied specific allegations from his White House chief of staff that Trump demanded repeatedly while he was president that the IRS should be sicked on people who he decided were his enemies and opponents. And yeah, that is some of what Richard Nixon is famous for, and not in a good way. Because of the potential for abuse in this particular job, because of our country's history with abuse in this particular job, you really want to make doubly, triply sure that the head of the IRS is somebody above reproach, somebody who won't do it if a president tries that kind of thing again. It's got to be a serious person with real expertise, real gravitas, somebody who won't be afraid to say no to some thin-skinned, vengeful, lawless president who might come along at some point. I mean, the last thing you want in this particular job is a fast-talking wheeler-dealer type.
Hey, and he get 25. When you get $30,000 out of 30, 35, 40, 45, 45, 50.
This is the guy that they're going to try to have head the IRS.
Talking.
I'm going to play it again.
Hey, and he get 25. When you get $30,000 out of 30, 35, 40, 45, 45, 50. How about $50,000 now? 5, 60, now 5, 65.
And so, behold, the literal auctioneer, a man who talks fast for a living, who Donald Trump has picked to be his commissioner of the IRS. Here are 5 things to know about Trump's IRS choice. Former Republican Congressman Billy Long.
Oh, this is just got disaster written all over it.
Number 1, on the qualifications of Billy Long to be head of the IRS. Is Billy Long a CPA, a certified public accountant? No.
And the reason she says CPA is because the IRS is all about auditing, making sure people pay their taxes. And, you may want someone that has experience in the field. Someone who is a tax accountant, someone who has a CPA.
Is he an accountant? No. Does he have any background at all in any kind of accounting? No. Bookkeeping? No. Finance? No. How about math? No. Is he a tax lawyer? No. Does he have a college degree? No. Has he ever managed a large organization of any kind?
Oh.
The IRS has 85,000 employees and
it's just so stupid. You have a company of, she said 85,000. It's probably around 85,000. And you want to have the head of it, someone who doesn't know anything about tax law, accounting, does not have a college degree. And she says math. I don't know what the math part means.
$12 billion budget. Ever managed a large organization of any kind? No. No, he has not. In addition to his work as an auctioneer, he has been a realtor. He's also been a radio talk show host, and he once ran a mini golf. That said...
Oh, man. If I had only known that he ran a miniature golf course, I would, of course, just say, oh, okay. Head of the IRS, 80,000 plus employees. You're qualified.
Billy Long has also moonlighted as a quasi-professional poker player, which prompted this rare political headline from Poker News. Quote, President-elect Donald Trump taps longtime poker player to head the IRS. So Billy Long has none of the qualifications for the job that every other IRS commissioner has had in the whole modern history of this agency. But he did serve in Congress. While he was in Congress, did he serve on any of the tax writing committees? No, he did not. But he did get an award while he was in Congress, and it was an award related to taxes. It was called the, quote, Tax Fighter Award from something called the National Tax Limitation Committee. What is the National Tax Limitation Committee? When Forbes magazine went to look into it, they found that the website for this organization now points to what appears to be a gambling website based in Thailand. That makes it harder to figure out the selection
That's
criteria
interesting.
for this particular.
Oh, I didn't know that. So it's a gambling website based in Thailand, which is interesting because Thailand is very, very strict about gambling. if anyone's been to Thailand, they know that they're very, very strict about it. I don't even know if at some point they couldn't even have casinos. Maybe they have a casino now. But yeah, like they're very, very strict about even you have to when you go buy the little coupons from the people with the little wooden boxes on the street. It's very regulated.
Award. But Billy Long won it. While he was in Congress, he did repeatedly introduce legislation to abolish the IRS, to in fact abolish the income tax as a thing, and instead replace it with a huge 30% sales tax on everything you buy. If that sounds...
Oh, geez. A 30% sales tax. Can you imagine a 30% sales tax on everything you buy? And then you combine that with Trump's 20%, 30% tariffs on everything you buy. A gallon of milk will literally be, it would be like $15, maybe $12 if you get a good deal. $12 for a gallon of milk, $20 for 2 dozen eggs. Silly.
Familiar, it's because this very expensive idea was ginned up by the Church of Scientology in the 1990s.
Oh, don't get me started on Scientology. Oh, geez.
Alive by Republicans like Billy Long ever since. Thing number 2. While he was in Congress, Billy Long did do one other tax-related thing, which has to do with puppies, which sounds awesome, but it's not good. When he was first elected to Congress, voters in Billy Long's home state of Missouri considered a ballot measure to improve conditions for dogs and puppies at puppy mill dog breeding facilities in that state. And it was basic kindness stuff. The measure said that dogs needed to have food and water and housing and some way to exercise and run around. And the people of Missouri voted for that. God bless them. But when the Humane Society said that they too supported that measure, Billy Long, newly in Congress, demanded that the IRS should launch an investigation into the Humane Society. He demanded that the IRS should strip them of their nonprofit status. Now, in the end, his demands were not heeded. He did not succeed in getting the IRS to crush the Humane Society as retaliation for its efforts to protect puppies. But if he were in charge of the IRS, presumably he could now get that wish. Which brings us to thing number 3. I mentioned that Billy Long mostly just has his auctioneer school degree. He has no background or training in anything substantively related to the IRS. But, caveat, look at his Twitter bio. You can see it says at the top there, Congressman Billy Long,
CTBA.
CTBA.
CTBA, which is a totally made up thing.
If you say it fast, it kind of sounds like CPA, but it's not. It's not a CPA, certified public account. It's a CTBA. What is a CTBA? He says that it stands for Certified Tax and Business Advisor. CTBA, Certified Tax and Business Advisor, which sounds very fancy. Is that a real thing? No, that is not really a thing.
Yeah. So you're putting in your official page, I'm a CTBA, but you actually make up what CTBA is. It's funny.
Billy Long, Trump's nominee to lead the IRS, touts a credential that tax experts say is dubious. Quote, the designation is offered by a small Florida firm, Excel Empire, which was established just 2 years ago and only requires attendance at a 3-day seminar.
Yeah, I'm going to post this CTBA title, which I got at a company that only requires attendance at a 3-day seminar. Don't worry about 4 years of college. You go to this seminar for 3 days, and we will give you this title.
Tax experts say they have never heard of CTBA as a credential in the tax profession. So, not a credential in the tax profession, but as a credential to be in charge of all taxes in the United States of America? Sure, why not? You say. The company from which Billy Long seems to have purchased this thing that sounds like CPA if you mumble, they do list someone as their chief tax planner and tax attorney, but that is a person who let his law license in Ohio lapse.
I would say she's drilling him a new hole in a part of his body that he doesn't currently have a hole.
15 years ago and apparently never regained it. So he appears to not be a licensed attorney of any kind, nor a licensed investment advisor. But his company will sell you that same CTBA credential that they sold Billy Long for somewhere between $30,000 and $4,997, depending on whether you catch the sale. The quote tax attorney at this company.
Any organization, and she brings up a point that doesn't just apply to this, but applies to many things. If you have an organization that charges you between what does it say there, $4,997 and $30,000 for the same thing, you might want to consider that it's not legitimate.
Who again is not a licensed attorney, also reportedly invented a whole other new title besides CTBA. So if you want to step it up a notch from the fake credential of CTBA, you can also select the title Tax Master. They will also proclaim you Tax Master, which also sounds amazing. We reached out to the Tax Master guy for comment, but he declined to answer our questions. That said, Billy Long himself apparently has not yet achieved the Tax Master title from this Florida company. He hasn't paid for it or gone to the seminar or whatever, but maybe when he's head of the IRS, they'll give him that designation as an honorary degree. Thing number 4, go back to the Twitter bio for a second. There's something else there besides the not a real thing, fake CTBA tax credential. Right there in his Twitter bio, it says, quote, DM me to save 40% on your taxes.
Oh, geez. DM means direct message me. He's trying to sell. He's trying to get people to give him money so he could help them on their taxes when he's actually not a CPA. So the legality of that actually could be something. He may not be legally able to do that, but I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Seriously, that is still there right now on his Twitter bio, even after he has been named to be IRS commissioner by the incoming president.
Oh, do you know what it is? I know what this is. He's saying DM me to save 40% of your taxes, and what he's going to do is he's going to refer you. He's acting as an agent. He's just going to refer you to someone who is a tax professional, and then he's going to take a cut of it. Like an agent typically takes like 5 to 10% of the cut. So he doesn't actually do any work. He refers you to someone who says, "Oh yeah, I'm friends with this guy," and then they charge you, and then they have to give a kickback. Yeah, it's just a kickback thing.
DM me to save 40% on your taxes. What that's about is this. Here's the current IRS commissioner testifying in Congress. And what he's doing in this testimony, he's actually asking Congress to get rid of one particular tax program, to close down a specific tax program because it had produced what the IRS called a, quote, gold rush of bogus tax claims. And that one particular tax program, which the IRS wants shut down because so many people are applying to it in bogus terms, that is what Billy Long does for a living now. At this company that he promotes now, 2 of its leaders were banned from working as securities brokers. But when COVID came around, they decided to start a new outfit that, among other things, promotes this particular COVID-era tax program. The New York Times describes the company as taking a, quote, expansive view of who is eligible to get money from this program. Billy Long certainly seems to. He, for example, says that you shouldn't listen to your CPA if your CPA tells you that this is a tax program for which you do not qualify.
When people walk in and say, "Hey, this auctioneer, real estate broker, former congressman, told me I'm going to get $1.2 million back. You're my CPA. Why didn't you tell me that? Like instantly, the reflex reaction is to go to bashing the. Oh, that's a joke. That's a fake deal. That's not true. You're going to have to pay all that money back. You'll get audited. You know, they just come up with any excuse they can.
They come up with any excuse. When your CPA tells you, you know, if you do this, you're going to get audited. You're going to have to pay this money back. You do not qualify for this thing. You know, it's just any excuse. Forget your CPA. Come talk to Billy. We reached out for comment to Billy Long and also to the company that he works with. We have.
I'll pause for a minute. Does anyone want to come on? I'll still be on for. I'll be on for another 10 minutes if someone wants to come on and talk. Otherwise, I'll wrap it up. I've been on for almost an hour.
I heard back. But I should tell you, the IRS has just warned that one of the, quote, worst of the worst tax scams that taxpayers should be on the lookout for is people telling you that you qualify for this tax program when in fact you don't.
Yes, that's exactly
You know,
true.
they just come up with any excuse they can.
Yeah, that's exactly how people get you to say that, yes, you qualify for this. They get their money. You get audited years down the road. The company that told you to get your money, they go out of business. They reform as a new business. So, you know, they're not on the hook. It's just so many scams.
Come up with any excuse. The IRS does this list every year. They call it the Dirty Dozen. Compiled annually, the Dirty Dozen lists a variety of common scams that taxpayers may encounter. Quote, don't fall prey, says the IRS. For the current Dirty Dozen list, it's what the IRS calls phishing and smishing scams. They also have this big description about fake charities trying to scam people. But number 2 on the latest IRS Dirty Dozen list of so-called worst of the worst tax scams is this one. Beware of aggressive promoters who dupe taxpayers into making questionable employee retention tax credit claims.
I don't know what that is.
The tax program that is a big enough multi-billion-dollar fraud magnet that the IRS recently took the unprecedented step of setting up a backseas system, setting up an "oh wow, I didn't mean it" system, where people who have been duped by scammers into believing they were eligible for this thing when they weren't, people can actually take back their filing from the IRS without getting into trouble for it. The IRS also really did ask Congress to shut this whole program down because it has been such a magnet for fraudsters. The IRS on its website right now warns this, quote, employers should be wary of advertisements that advise them to apply for money by claiming the credit when they may not qualify. The ads have been all over radio, TV, and social media. You may even get ads that look like official government letters or texts, emails, and phone calls advertising.
Yeah, so this looks like, I don't know too much about this, but it looks like that the IRS will temporarily give you your tax, whatever you have in your tax return, they will credit this, but it's subject to, you know, audits down the road. And that's why they're saying that.
Eligibility. That's the warning from the IRS.
Because if the IRS could immediately reject this kind of claim or credit, then it wouldn't even be a thing that they would be saying.
IRS right now. To anybody who might see an ad for the employee retention tax credit. The same tax credit that Billy Long advertises on his hat, which he wears because promoting this exact tax program is what he does for a living. The New York Times profile, quote, at meetings with chapters of Hispanic chambers of commerce across the country, Mr. Long sometimes wore a hat advertising the credit as he tried to drum up business. In a podcast interview last year about his work, Long said, quote, what's working for me is the trust factor. They see me getting this money for their compadres.
Okay, yeah. Oh, this is just ridiculous.
The trust factor. Same get free money from the IRS tax pitch, same hat, same auctioneer, now the potential future boss of the IRS.
If I ever wanted to do exactly what Billy Long's doing, I could absolutely do it. I could have people pay me hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I would lead them to false information about exactly what he's saying. But there's something called having honor. But
which brings us to thing number 5. Billy Long, Donald Trump's choice for IRS commissioner, likes props, hats and gear and mascots and stuff. He wears that hat about the fraud magnet tax program that he promotes in his Twitter bio and when he's traveling around the country talking to Hispanic groups. He very briefly became famous during the first Trump impeachment when this photo circulated of him appearing to have a wad of cash sticking out of his suit pocket while he was waiting to give his speech in support of Trump on the House floor. But what looked like cash sticking out of his pocket is actually fake money. Not real money, but fake money that he apparently carries around and gives out all the time.
It's fake money. It's fake money that he gives out all the time. I can't tell from that angle if it's fake money or not. It actually looks kind of like a $5 bill.
It's a fake $45 bill.
Oh, $45 bill for Trump's 45th president.
With Trump's face on it. Get it? Because he was the 45th president. Billy Long likes to say that that's the only bill he ever passed in Congress, which is very funny and also true. And also it's a joke about him being ineffectual in Congress. And it's also a joke about counterfeiting. Billy Long claims that he once tipped a Las Vegas cab driver with one of the fake $45 bills. And he says the cab driver was thrilled because who doesn't like to be tipped with fake money?
Yes. The interesting part of the story she just said is that she said the cab driver was thrilled because who doesn't like to be tipped with fake money?
The fake Trump money isn't all of it, though. Billy Long has also praised Trump's stamina in public. He tweeted that Trump is, quote, the Energizer Bunny, quote, and I'm the Energizer Turtle. I don't know about that one. Billy Long has also repeatedly claimed to have invented the phrase Trump train, which again, I don't know, but honestly, let's just leave it there. Who's going to fight him for that honor? But that's 5 things to know about Billy Long, Trump's pick to lead the IRS. That said, though, in the spirit of bad math, here's also a bonus thing that is not technically about Billy Long, which is that Billy Long should not be appointed commissioner of the IRS when Donald Trump becomes president. Not because Billy Long is unqualified or because he wants to abolish the IRS or because he currently makes his living peddling a prop.
Oh, that is an interesting thing we didn't bring up before. He has posted in the past he wants to abolish the IRS, and now he's being considered to run the IRS. I mean, oh, Jesus.
Problematic tax credit that he would then be in charge of, not to mention what him running the IRS might mean for people like at the Humane Society who want to protect puppies. No, Billy Long should not be the appointed commissioner of the IRS when Trump becomes president, because nobody should. And that's because there is no vacant position to nominate anyone to. The IRS already has a commissioner who is currently in the middle of a 5-year term that doesn't end until 2027. The IRS isn't like any other government agency. It's not like, the State Department where a new president's going to have a new foreign policy. And so he gets to nominate a new Secretary of State when he gets sworn in. The IRS isn't like that. It is just a technocratic institution that is supposed to crunch the numbers and carry out the job of collecting taxes in a technocratically efficient and sufficient way. A way that doesn't change from one administration to the next. And so the IRS is one of those agencies where the top person isn't supposed to turn over with a new president. The job has a 5-year term. It's specifically supposed to overlap into various presidents' terms because it's one of those jobs that really desperately needs to be independent and protected from politics. No president in modern history has ever fired the IRS chief at the start of his term just because he wanted his own guy in there. The fact that Donald Trump apparently wants and intends to do that should itself ring alarm bells, regardless of who he picks. for the Trump train, Energizer turtle, fake $45 bill thing. Regardless of whether it's Billy Long, CTBA, or anyone else. This is just something that should not happen. This has been another Rachel Maddow show.
This is, this whole thing is just silly. Like, if we talk about who has the least qualifications to be something, this guy's got it. He might take the cake. All right. Hold on. Let's remove that. Okay, I'll be on for like another 5 minutes. Someone wants to come on, talk, or at least post. If you have any questions about this Billy Long's qualifications, you can certainly post that. But oh boy, what we just saw is so funny. I'll play it. Should I play it? Nah, I shouldn't play it. I was going to play him again doing what you do when you're selling cattle. I can't do it too well, but it's like, give me 25, 30, 35, 35, 40, 44, 45, 45, 50. That's what he does for a living. So I'm going to take a 2-minute break. Yeah, actually, I'll take a 5-minute break. Anyone wants to come on, I'll pump you. Pump you through. And we covered 2 very unimportant topics today. We covered Trump getting no sentence. He was sentenced, but he got no sentence. And the latest pick for IRS commissioner who's going to decide how to collect our taxes. I was going to post this video originally as what to pack because, like, I've started packing, going to Thailand, and I'm running out of space really soon, and I have hardly packed half of what I want to pack. And there's no way I'm buying another suitcase. It's a decent sized suitcase, but I just got like a lot of crap I want to bring. Dun, dun. All right. Let's see in the next couple of minutes if anyone wants to come on. If not, we'll wrap it up and call it a night. Oh, Barry's on. I just checked, but it looks like Barry's on.
I've got $200 to eat for tomorrow. What are you gonna do? You're gonna sleep with her. You're gonna give her $1,000. Tell her, there's $1,000. There you go. You can eat for a couple of days. So you're not gonna tell her, oh, let me take it free.
How can this not be exciting to people?
You know, you're not gonna eat for the next 2 days because some of them are down to the $200, and and they're gonna give them money. So they give them money, pay for them too. Okay, the anniversary, he said he's making 10 grand a month. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so you hot bar making good money, good girls. I believe that. Okay. I told you bars make money. Okay, you told me, but you can't tell me which bar. You can't really tell me which bar. Yeah, okay. Okay. There you go. The bar owners interview single man outside the game job for free. Yeah, you could do all that. Test the waters if you want. It's not a very good move, though. Think about casting couch tripod. You're mixing business with pleasure. It's not a very good thing to do, but I do it. all that happens. This is Thailand. Yeah, it happens. But so your advice is to get into the watch business? No, your advice is to get into a business which you can make money from, whether it's watches or e-commerce. Or there's loads of things on e-commerce you can sell before you get to Thailand. But don't go to Thailand and decide that you want to make money from it, because you're not going to make no money. You're going to lose money, and you ain't going to make money. You're just going to lose all your money. Everybody else has lost all their money. There's no difference between you or anybody else. You're going to lose your money. So if you want to go and lose your money like everybody else, go down there. Boss, no, anybody in Thailand have nightclubs is winning like 808 Ibar. Boss, do you know of Joseph? Yeah,
Okay. Looks like hold on, let me pause Barry here. Yep. I know how important Barry is to the community. Yeah, we're gonna chop it off here. I think it was a good stream. It was a good analysis of what's going on. So cheers, guys. Talk soon. Maybe even tonight on a different stream.